been investigating a story about a classified government program.
What you're saying is that you were a psychic spy.
A Jedi warrior.
You will be a psychic weapon. Feel it, yeah!
We don't fight with guns, we fight with our minds.
I have an Australian question for you. I've just written a foreword for a book that the guy is trying to publish, and that he's traveled around the world, but he told a story about being in Australia and said he went into a cave and found some rocks there that had been inscribed and whatnot, and took one of them with him. Obviously, I'm not sure. It was on the South Shore someplace in that. But I think he's back in Brisbane. And he mentioned it to some people and showed it to them. And they went, whoa, you know, don't touch this. But he said he said all of a sudden, not instantaneous now, but that people from your Department of Antiquities or something showed up, and they arranged to return them and all of that, but said it was a very sensitive issue.
So what do you think that they were?
Well, that
like
they had
hieroglyphs or something?
The rocks had come from an old cave that he just happened to be wandering around on, and saw some things that were inscribed and thought, oh, this is interesting. And had not seen or not anticipated that this would cause literally an uproar.
Right.
You know, to get the artifact back and return. And, you know, whoever he was dealing with, an art dealer or something, said, whoa, you know, this is go to jail kinds of stuff if you try to export it. I just wonder what the sensitivity on those issues are.
Well, definitely anything prehistory, Aboriginal, sacred art, such things are absolutely forbidden to be touched, of course. You know, it's cultural vandalism.
Well, that's what this would have been. It just found, you know, he found it purely accidentally. It was not an intention to steal a precious antiquity, but that he was just surprised at the just how significantly it was taken.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things here that Australia has. You know, have you heard of the English eccentric? There's a sort of an idea of the English people being maybe a little bit more eccentric than the average.
No,
it's sort of a cultural tradition amongst British people, particularly English, that a lot of us, and I consider myself, you know, I'm a British Australian. My family's proudly Scottish and English too. But there's this sort of tradition of being eccentric. It's like I think it of as a type of high intelligence, but high intelligence that leads to an interest, like you and I have, in the weird stuff, the unusual, and being really individual, being very, you know, who cares what people think. Like I hang out my washing with a kilt on. You know, I've got a Highland outfit when it's cold enough. Because when I bought my kilt and my Highland gear, my wife said, "When are you going to wear it?" And I said, "Darling, if you let me buy it, I'll wear it." And so, if I go down to town, I'll be harassed by the locals. But if I get out and hang out the washing and do things like that just for the fun of it. And it's sort of an Australian British tradition to be a bit eccentric. And over the years, I've met many. I like those sort of people. There's been many Australian researchers into Yowies, you know, our Sasquatch. You know, many guys who are obsessed with that and written books and books and whatever. But that particular one you were speaking about with the rocks and there's sort of a tradition here of maybe ancient peoples came here, maybe the Syro-Phoenicians or the Egyptians or ancient peoples came to Australia. And
is this opposed to the out of Africa where they came down and you had a land bridge that before Australia was isolated? Supposedly that there was they thought people had migrated.
Yeah, well, that's still considered pretty much what looks like happened.
Yeah,
that people came down through India, from Africa through India. Just
I'm not a fan of out of Africa.
Yeah,
I think there's too many issues, but I just know that's the common theme is that they had come across, might have run into them, but when Indonesia and all of that in Africa were there was a land bridge that went across and then separated, but people were already humans of Homo sapien of some kind were already on this side, or
and then there's all the new discoveries of the Denisovians and the hobbits,
right?
The Homo hobbitus or something. No, there's some other name for them in Indonesia. Tiny little people. There's a lot going on, isn't there? But this is sort of more a tradition that perhaps they sailed here. Perhaps ancient people sailed here. That they were much more ocean-going than has been given credit. You've heard of the Kon-Tiki, Thor Heyerdahl.
Yeah.
That's that sort of idea that, Easter Island with the statues, that even our Aboriginal people, I don't think this is just a theory. Apparently before the people that we think of, the American Indians, came across the land bridge up north, that there was people are much more like Australian Aboriginals, and I've often seen Mexicans.
Definitely Asian. When you look at the DNA structures, there are certain commonalities there. Now, I ran into this in South America. If you get down to Nazca in Peru, the famous Nazca lines, but also in there's a huge number of mummies. And I know I was asking them, but they were giving me the out of Africa theme had come across when the Aleutians was a land bridge. And then when the ice ages came, it cut off the people, and these were down there. In my view, this does not explain some very large population centers. If you look in the Mato Grosso in Brazil, for instance, too many folks, and of course, lots of them have sort of also disappeared.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we do better with our ground penetrating sensor systems from satellites, and we look at the LiDAR systems that have been used, say, in Central South America, and found that Mayan civilizations and Aztec were far, far greater than anybody ever anticipated. Now, one of the things that had amazed me, I was in Chichen Itza many years ago. This was 1960s, maybe 70. There's a place there called the Nunnery. And on the nunnery were carvings of various faces. And they had all of the known races in there. And you go, no, this doesn't make sense in this room.
Yeah, well, that's what, when I was saying about the eccentric Australian or British idea, that there's been a number of guys who've written about supposedly secret little valleys in Australia near Newcastle, Sydney, where there's rock carvings and artifacts that seem to have come from Egypt, hieroglyphs, and even there is a story about after a huge storm in the 60s, all this sand was moved from some place. I think it might have been, you mentioned Adelaide, I think it might have been down that way. They reckon there was a prow of a Egyptian ocean-going ship there. So that sort of stuff, it's always frustrating when you read a story like that. There's no footnotes, reference, way of possibly finding out what this is about. I find that very frustrating. But there's a wonderful young guy called Paul Anthony Wallace, who I just had a long chat with him, and I'm going to hopefully interview him soon. Who was a Church of England pastor. He's not that young, but he's 56. I'm 63. But you're our elder. We look up to people your age as the real seniors. But this guy's extremely well-spoken, intelligent, and he was a Church of England minister for 30 years, like an actual ordained minister, priest. And his thing is ancient astronauts, ancient aliens. But I always liked Von Daniken as much as I just enjoyed it as an idea. But this guy, Paul, is he's very well researched and sort of calm and rational about it. He doesn't just make absurd claims and expect you to just believe it. He sort of goes into all sorts of reasons why he thinks it's possible that we were visited in the ancient past by other races. And his particular thing, which I'm really interested in, is retranslating the Bible, for instance. A lot of the ancient words that translators have translated to fit with their theology, he sort of takes these words and says, well, this actually is much more like this meaning, which puts a whole different sort of view on it, and especially where they might be describing a technology that wouldn't have been understandable by ancient people, but they saw something and they tried to explain what it was they witnessed. And his videos are very interesting, and he talks about what you were talking about before, about the Outer Africa hypothesis, and perhaps that's not quite right, but maybe there has been humanoid groups. His thing is more that we were tweaked from not just a primate, but that we've got some of the DNA of these.
Well, that is one of the hypotheses, that we are them.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with speciation, you do see some leaps that don't make sense if you're doing a straight biological evolutionary approach to it.
Yeah. You've probably come across the aquatic ape theory.
The what?
You know the aquatic ape theory?
No.
It's an idea that we're a type of ape that's aquatic, that's that evolved to live by the sea, to eat seafood, and it's sort of based on a few things, like our hair is wetting, whereas apes apparently the hair doesn't wet and lie flat, whereas ours does, which is much more like seals. The way our hair patterns work is much more the way the seal's hair is. It lies flat, becomes more aquadynamic, I suppose might be the word. The fact that we got a thatch and a beard on the top, we don't really need it under the water so much. We come up and we're protected from the sun by the hair. Also, our swallowing, we've got a mechanism where we can close the airway when we go underwater, and apes apparently don't have that. And as an ex-surfer, I know well, it's one of the first things you develop as a surfer is the ability to close off your nose so that the water doesn't get jetted up there under huge pressure.
Right.
And it becomes just normal. You don't even think about it. You just close it off. But they call it a diving. It's a diving reflex. But yeah, perhaps I've always thought, looking at our bare skin and sexual organs, the breasts on women, these sort of things are not really common amongst primates at all. You can see that there's certain things that we definitely share with them, but then again, there's some stuff that's really pretty weird. And even our feet, as an artist, one of the things I remember learning was that legs are essentially arms, and the thumb is the heel. When you look at the skeleton of a foot, you've got a big thumb, and then the four fingers come forward and makes that arch. But there's another one, the little toes floating on the side there, and it doesn't quite make sense where that came from. It's just a sort of a standing thing, it's developed. So the human anatomy is really quite different. And when we share a lot of things with pigs, I think the pig's liver's almost exactly the same as ours, and our eyes are very similar to pigs' eyes. And so, it's an interesting subject that,
Yeah, well, I've got a question, and we've been having fun for quite a while. Have you got any specific things that you want to ensure we address?
Well, I've really enjoyed the fact that we've talked about the UAP UFO thing. I wanted to talk to you about that, but I think it is really the topic of the moment, isn't it? Amongst those questions I had for you, I guess I just wanted to ask you about your developing of ways to enhance remote viewing and development of abilities like psychokinesis. And did you use specific visual training aids or tools or practices to enhance people? You spoke once about people being on a spectrum.
Yeah.
Yuri at one end, and you've got the ordinary person at the other. And
from the military perspective, when we were getting into it, the question that arose was, do we take people like you who are already artists and teach them how to do remote viewing, or do we find people who are natural remote viewers and teach them either art or intelligent sorts of things? And the answer is sort of a hybrid. Tried a host of things. Now, they had protocols for looking all kinds of tests and whatnot. The reality, I think, is when you think back on most of them, there was an innate skill that was picked up on for whatever reason. Joe McMonagle, for instance, who had near-death experiences and whatnot. And that seemed to be they had done psychological testing to see if there are various correlates that said these people are most likely to improve. Now, the approach, my theory on this now is everybody can do this. Some people are much better than others. Yeah. You would probably be far better than I am, because I am one of these people that's stick people. And if I'm going to draw this, I need a ruler to do it and whatnot. And I don't see the things mentally as artistically as others do. And I would say most of the ones I know, pretty damn good artists. And they were more that way first. And again, I think it has something more to do with, how the mind is conceptualizing these things and the ability to translate that, physically, getting it down. The problems we've had We digress to like near-death experiences where you're having these ineffable experiences. You meet God or whatever the descriptions are, and then you come back and you say, "How do I translate this? How do I make it people?" And we find that most people, it takes them probably years to integrate it internally. Comprehend the experience, and then trying to advise others on that is just very difficult. I mean, I think everybody can be better, but I now walk. I used to run a lot. Have too many friends with titanium knees and whatnot now, but could run a long ways, but no matter how much running I did, I wasn't going to break a 6-minute mile or do anything like that. But you'd improve. I think that's basically what's true from remote viewing perspective. And obviously, I have friends who teach that. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot more persistence than most people realize.
Yeah.
I mean, and what Ingo Swann, he brought this concept of the matrix and started formalizing the process on that. And again, making it a teachable skill. We do think it's teachable. I don't know if it's good news or not, but there is a beginner's artifact where people initially do pretty well, then it tapers off, and then you got to work back up the chain and improve it. And it's just like weight loss, where you can lose a few pounds quickly, and then you hit the plateau, and you have to struggle to continue on after that. I might mention, I just today, last couple of days, I've been getting, Russell Targ.
Yes, I've heard of him. Yep.
Yeah, he has a new remote viewing enhancement app out that's supposedly available for free at the Apple Store.
Oh, I want that.
And I just I got an email from him earlier today on that. So this is just happening.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah,
I'll get that for sure. A friend of mine who he's a fantastic writer, very creative guy, and he created a Simon Higgins, his name is, and he's written mainly children's exciting sort of Japanese. He's a martial artist. He's actually a really, really good Aikido practitioner. He lives in China now. He's married this gorgeous Chinese girl who's just brilliant, and they call her China's Walt Disney. She's only young, but she's an amazing animator. Anyway, with her, he created this sort of a game type story where you chose different directions. It's a sort of thing that's been done before, but he did it visually as a type of a computer game. It was really quite exciting and very sci-fi, but within it had a Xena card game. That's what it's called, isn't it? The is it Xena cards?
The wavy line, star, triangle, etc.
Yeah, that sort of thing where you sort of a telepathic test.
That's the Zener deck.
Xena.
That's the Zener deck, yeah.
Right, the Zener deck, yeah. So he had a computer game version of that, but it was done so as it was real, it wasn't rigged. And part of the game was you're this character and you have to get tested to see if you're psychic. So I'm playing this thing and I'm consistently getting like 8 out of 10. And I started to get a bit freaked out by it. So I wrote to him, I said, is this rigged? Is this just part of the game, to make me feel good?
Yeah.
He says, no, it's real. He said, it's sort. I think the normal is like 2 out of 10 by chance or something. And he said, if you
Well,
get
that would be, 2 out of 10 would be at what the anticipated figure.
right. So he said probably MK Ultra is going to come and visit me if they find this out. And I went, no, I don't want to be locked up in some kind of underground institution. But people have that fear, like if you've got abilities, that these dudes are going to come and get you. But he said, that's really pretty unusual, or very unusual, that you'd get so many. But what was happening was, as I was looking at them, when I relaxed, when I tried too hard, I couldn't do it. But when I just really relaxed, I was seeing a vision of which one it was. I was getting, it seemed like it jiggled. I could see it jiggling and say this one, and I go, boom, it'd be right. And then, and I was watching that amazing Life of Uri Geller, which you were in, and
Wow.
I was blown away by how many dead accurate things Uri did when, he was the sealed envelopes and people in that cage and were sending to him. And I thought it's just like, couldn't be chance that he would get so many right. And I wrote it down somewhere, but I know it was like an incredible hit rate. So my sort of thesis in my book Portal is that our visual mind, which seems to be located at least physically in the rear of the brain, it's like the beginner's mind that you mentioned before. When people start out, they do better because they're not using the conscious mind. As soon as the conscious mind comes in and starts to second guess and doubt, they lose that back there. They lose that. And when I teach people Kung Fu, I can often get them to do amazing force just effortlessly because they just believe me. They think, oh, Dave's the Sifu, he's the master. He's telling me I'll just do it. But then the second lesson or whatever, they start to, oh, this is actually really hard and I'm no good and I don't know how to do it. And I've found, and you would know this well, people who teach something for a long time tend to get in a rut and formalize and codify things that worked for them, or the way it's always been done. This is the tradition, and it becomes like heresy to question those ideas. And we've definitely got that in our Kung Fu system, where there's whatever the old master said, that's kosher. That's anything outside of that, no, he didn't do it that way. But people I admire have said to me, the beginner's mind is the most important thing, like to come at things as if you know nothing and just see it fresh.
Well, I might add, actually, this brings us kind of full circle. We had started talking about martial arts. And I tell you about my cousin Gary. And yes, he's in Ishan-Ryu. But having said that, he adopted it because he's a big guy and changed the reach and could reach farther and hit harder than most. I tend to have problems with the folks who get into dogmas. Is you got to do it just like this, as opposed to people who incorporate, whatever works for them. And I think that's true in these areas as well. It's that all of us have different backgrounds coming in. You bring a set of skills that, I certainly wouldn't, and that is already know how to draw and whatnot. So going that route for you would make a lot more sense than for somebody like me to try and, go to art school or something like that. Totally. Yeah. The other problem that you tend to have are expectations, where people set unreasonable expectations from the start, and if they don't get it, and that's why I think a lot of people kind of dabble with remote viewing and stop because they say, okay, it's too hard. You got to keep going at this, and not willing to take the time and effort to actually develop the skills.
Yeah, that's very wise, and that, of course, is the translation of the word kung fu. Is mastery through hard work or effort.
Yeah.
And that can seem a bit off-putting to some people who think, oh, why do I have to try so hard? Surely it just should come naturally. But I think the better translation is mastery through not giving up, like doggedly sticking at it day out, year in, year out. I've been doing our Wing Chun for 24 years, and for some people that's a long time. For me, I don't even feel the time because it never stops being interesting to me. I get up every day and I think about it. Same as art, I'm always thinking about it. And, it's not really hard work.
Well, I was reminded of something John Lilly mentioned. I don't know if you know. Do you know Lilly?
What's his field?
Well, he was one of the first ones in LSD. He's known for Lilly on dolphins. He invented the sensory deprivation tank and all of that.
Sorry.
They were talking about dealing with some monks, Tibetan monks, who were doing chanting, and going like a certain sound, and he goes, well, what's this? He says, well, we've been working on this note for 17 years and we still don't understand all of the aspects of this single note.
Oh, that's great.
Another friend of mine who was talking to the Dalai Lama and who were watching people do some extraordinary things with manipulating weather and whatnot. And he goes, well, that is, that's truly amazing. And His Holiness says, yes, but you don't know how many lifetimes they have spent perfecting it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a whole different interesting subject, isn't it? That whole reincarnation and the that idea that a soul keeps working on the same, like that's brilliant actually, isn't it? Like you get the child prodigy that plays and you think they have to have spent a lifetime. It's like, funny enough, when I first got on the yoga mat and I'd resisted and resisted, but as soon as I stood on the thing, I saw myself as a very old Indian guy, and it was definitely me, but it wasn't me, and I was just made for it. It's like, whoa, I have been here. I have been here for a long time on this mat. I don't know why I know that. I just sort of suddenly knew it. And I found it a way for me forward, like a way into a lot of things.
Well, I only had that once. And I did have an experience. I was in Hawaii where I was assigned and had been there a number of years. But anyway, I was running along the beach and all of a sudden it shifted. And that beach of today wasn't there. And I was, in a different time and whatnot as a Hawaiian.
Wow.
And then switch back. I've only had that experience once. What I have been hearing more and more of lately, and in fact, when I wrote the foreword for this guy's book, was addressing it, and that is what are pre-birth contracts, and what we have attempted to set out for ourselves in this lifetime. Not that there aren't going to be options, but that you're setting it up so that you can, there are certain things that one is, potentially trying to endeavor. Last week, I was listening to an interview with Evan Alexander, was actually interviewing another near-death experiencer. Absolutely amazing tale. Too long to go into now. Her name's Nancy Rhymes. I can send you the link to it where you can actually listen to how this NDE went down. She is in Boulder riding a bicycle in January and gets broadsided by a car by a woman who's still not looking, and says she's on the hood looking at this woman running the text on there who doesn't know she's at the bike. But part of that experience was that she said that, again, a pre-birth, I don't know if it's a contract or a design, that said the big thing here was she was a scientist and an atheist. And all of a sudden from this is going like, in fact, the first thing she said was she's outside of her body, bilocated and all that. And well, this can't be true because this is a very pleasant place. My mother is a devout Catholic, and she said, if you're an atheist, you're automatically going to hell. And but the germane story was that said that in her contract or lesson plan, whatever it was, that's how she would interact for the first part of her life, that she'd be given 3 opportunities to change. And interestingly, as she looked back, she had missed the first 2.
Right.
So this one was really dramatic, broke everything and all of that. But yeah, it's some areas that I'm trying to explore now and come to a better understanding of.
That's extremely interesting. That's extremely interesting. I know that I've picked up, reading Joseph Campbell 20 years ago. I remember him saying, as an old man, I think, I don't know, he was only in his 70s, but he was talking about how he found he could look back over his life and all the things that always seemed like mistakes and bummers and missed turns and whatever all made absolute perfect sense, how it led him to all the other things.
Yeah.
And other people talking about that sense of seeing their life that they'd planned it out. Dr. Raymond Moody told me that his adopted daughter had told him when she was about 9 that she'd been pushed out of heaven by God, who was her friend, who said, you've got to go and become the child of that man down there and his wife. And she's like, no, I don't want to go. And God said, no, you have to go. That's the plan. No, I want to stay here. She said God just went like this and shoved her out of heaven, and next thing she's there with Raymond Moody. And
well, that's almost this story where she said, no, you really busted up badly. I don't want to go. I really like it here. And no, you're going back.
Well, I've had it, like most people, I have quite an incredible life. So many things I've done and experienced and went through. But one thing, I've never really made a lot of money, and I've had so many sort of amazing opportunities sort of dashed out of my hands at the last minute, as if, no, money's not for you. It's sort of, it's been like that. And all the books, you get the self-help books, they're always about money, and it's always about, all you have to do is believe, and the universe will send you $1 million and this sort of thing. And I've tried all that for so many years, and there's just, I've sort of thought about it many times. Thought it seems as if maybe I was like super rich in the last life, and there's a reason for this, because so many opportunities where I could have just not struck it rich, but done really well for myself, and then always inexplicably like I remember I had the job. I was going to be an art director for this company that were doing all these amazing film. I'd started working in film. I'd done a bit of illustrating for special effects, and I was going to be the art director for this special effects company, and all these wonderful things were going to happen. And I was just about to move my family up to Brisbane, spent a lot of money relocating, and then the head of this company disappeared, and it turned out she'd embezzled like $1 million, and it all just crashed down. And thank God we didn't move. But philosophically, I look at those things and I think, well, but it was out of my hands, and these things, it's like I chose this life, and my life's always been like a mystic's life. I've sort of chosen. It's always been about the personal, the discovery of God or the universe, the mysteries, developing talents and those sort of things. And I've got friends who've got, 5 houses and all that stuff, but they haven't really done much, They're sort of just good things happen to them financially.
Yeah. I know them.
Yeah. But it is extremely interesting, isn't it, life? This life is very interesting.
By the way, regarding portals, have you seen this current season of The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch?
I haven't. I haven't seen the one with you in it. Are you in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I must see it because I did watch. Is it Bigelow? Does Mr. Bigelow own the Skinwalker?
Yeah. What about him?
Oh, I remember seeing one of the series or episodes about Skinwalker and found it very spooky.
I think it's 3 that I'm in, but the point I was going to mention, and at the end of 2, they have, the trailer to get ready. And I come on, I'm sitting pretty much like I am now, and I say, it's a portal. And that's what they use. And people started going around. I said, wait a minute, you understand that we talked for an hour and they took a 2-second clip and, use that. But no, and it's in the segment that I'm in the following week, it's explained much more. And trying to explain these phenomenal events that are going on. And,
yeah. So it's sort of a gateway between dimensions or between energies, and that's what I'm on about with calling it portal. I've had other, like most writers, you think of different names for what you're going to call this thing you're creating, but the word portal just has a real ring to it. It's got a magical, mysterious, feeling, but that's how I experience it. And funny enough, Paul Anthony Wallace, the Church of England minister I was talking about, he's a great guy. He's an Aussie, but he's a really nice guy and a great, very intelligent, interesting person to talk to. And he was talking to me, and I saw a couple of his episodes on his YouTube channel, which is called The Fifth Kind. I don't know if you've seen that. He's talking about these skulls. You've probably seen, with the big heads.
The ones in Peru, where they've done, it's clearly deformed.
Yeah, and did you see any that you thought might have been natural, like rather than bound, like might have been some kind of?
I've seen that.
Big brain or something.
Not sure. No, I've actually seen the skulls in Peru. And of course, there's a lot of places that are done where they're binding the heads, particularly when the children are young.
Yeah.
You find that in Egypt too, where you had kind of elongation to the back as well. Not a practice I would recommend. But the question is whether the Nephilim or whatnot. I don't know.
So did you saw skulls that looked like they weren't bound, that they were perhaps like that?
It's almost smaller than what you see in Aliens and the movie versions, if you will.
Yeah, well, after seeing that, talking to him and seeing that, and obviously, I think Eric von Daniken talks about that in his early books and other people. But there's my idea of the portal, comes from the feeling in the back of the head, which I first noticed as an artist. When I'd get into the artistic space, when I'd just get a sudden inspiration and see a painting pretty much fully formed just come to me. There was always a sense of back here, and other numinous experience where I felt a connection to God. It was always seemed to be here. And
Well, you see this in art too, in the halos and
yeah,
things. Now are we talking the crown chakra or something that's visible, or because
yeah.
the crown chakra was actually above,
Well, that's it.
the forehead. The seventh chakra is above the head. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me in the last time we spoke, and I thought a lot about it and read it up, and the crown chakra, and it's outside the head. And the interesting thing is our old kung fu master said that, that it's like you're back here, you're out of your body. And another guy who's highly influential on me from Adelaide, a kung fu master, he sort of talked about being outside the body. And the other day I was listening to this Paul Anthony Wallace talking about these skulls, and I literally, this is sort of how I roll. Things happened to me, and I felt that I had this really big skull. And as I was turning my head, I could feel it in 3D moving around. And it's like, and I thought, well, what if these people, if they are a different race, if they are a more advanced race, what if that rear brain, which connects to the universe, is like more highly developed? And we tend to think of that as like the primitive brain, like the old brain, but maybe that's the more important brain, and it was developed. But I definitely had a strong feeling that there was something back there. Yeah, I think there's something to it. But anyway, all right. Well, you've given me an hour and 3/4, and
Well, there we go. Yeah.
like we said
Time
last time,
flies when you're having fun. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like I'm, you're a dear friend that I love to go and sit in the porch with and talk to. I could really talk to you all day, but
It's always interesting.
yeah. Thanks so much. That was great, really great, and thanks for talking about the UFO thing too, because it really seems like something's happening. I just feel like this disclosure might be bigger than we expected. I was sort of thinking, well, they're probably not going to give away much, but maybe they are.